why not do a new musical inspired by Twelfth Night, but with Duke Ellington's songs, not just the music, but the actual songs. And I said, sure, let's do that.
No problem.
No problem.
Easy.
Let's just make that happen.
As you may know, Sheldon is the conceiver of Play On and also is directing our production. He and the wonderful Cheryl West, book writer, have put this fantastic show together, and so we'll have a chance to hear more about that. But really thrilled to have Sheldon with us. It is actually, I was just saying as I was looking up more about just, doing a little bit of homework in advance of this conversation, September 2026, when we open the show, will be the 30th year of this production since its original world premiere. Mm-hmm. And so how wonderful to be...
I was 11 at the time.
How wonderful to be able to have it celebrate an anniversary here in Chicago. So
yes, I'm thrilled about that. Great to be here. Hello, everybody. Hello. Always love being in Chicago, and have not had a chance to work in this theater until now, but have done several other things over the years at other Chicago theaters, and it's a great city and a great theater city, so very, very happy that we're coming back.
So great. Maybe you could start by talking a little bit about the origin of this work and sort of what was your initial idea, concept, how you came to Shakespeare, but kind of help us understand sort of your impulse in creating this work.
Well, if I can remember that far back.
30 years ago, maybe
Yeah.
more than 30 years ago.
No, I have a pretty good memory of it. I was through a grant from Theater Communications Group, when they used to give grants. I was in a residency at the Old Globe Theater in San Diego, which does distinguish itself, much like this theater does, by doing Shakespeare and new plays and classics and musicals as well. And one of the things that attracted me to going to that theater was that the first time I worked there as a freelance director, Jack O'Brien, who was the artistic director, had just finished directing King Lear with Hal Holbrook in a great production, and was about to start rehearsals for Damn Yankees the next week. And I said, well, that's my kind of guy, who in the same month will do King Lear and Damn Yankees. And that's my kind of theater, because I was interested in trying to touch all of those bases. So I got, following directing there for the first time, we got this grant, and I became the associate artistic director through the use of the grant. And during one of my first weeks there, Jack, who is a very big personality, said, oh, honey, you got to do something really big. You got to do something really big and explosive. Think big. Think as big as you want to, honey. You can do it. Whatever you want to do, we'll make it happen. So I said, well, okay, I'll do that. And I had seen, at one point, I had seen a really brilliant production of Timon of Athens, which is a hard thing to do, period. A brilliant production of Timon of Athens. It was directed by Michael Langham, very famous British director. And he used Duke Ellington's Shakespeare suite as the underscore for that production. And I was just blown away by this combination of Shakespeare and Duke Ellington. First of all, finding out that Duke Ellington was a Shakespeare fan, so he wrote a Shakespeare suite. I said, wow, that's really interesting. So at Jack's behest, I started to think about my favorite Shakespeare play, which is Twelfth Night, which is a play that I'd been in several times, going all the way back to college at Carnegie Mellon University. And so I knew the play well, loved the play, and loved the combination of music and romance and comedy and darkness, all of those things that Twelfth Night is. So I said, oh, okay, well, it'd be kind of fun to do that Michael Langham had done with Twelfth Night, to do Twelfth Night and sort of underscore it with some Ellington music. And at that point, I didn't know what that music would be. I said, okay, that's an interesting idea, and I did pursue that for a while. But then on one of those blinding walks of creativity that we sometimes get, I said, well, why not do a new musical inspired by Twelfth Night, but with Duke Ellington songs, not just the music, but the actual songs. And I said, sure, let's do that.
No problem.
No problem.
Easy.
Let's just make that happen. And I'll be quite honest, I really did say to myself at this point, that's really a fun, crazy idea. But you are not going to do it unless you can really make the songs work to tell the story. And if you have to bend Shakespeare a little bit to do that, then you can do that. But whatever story it is you're going to tell, you have to make sure that the songs really tell the story. It can't just be grab whatever Ellington songs that you want. So I gave myself that challenge and really was going to stick to it. But the great thing was that Ellington's catalog was inexhaustible. It just went on and on and on, and if you started to really dig into it beyond a lot of the songs that I already knew, he was he was like a great composing team out of town in Boston, in that he would always, if I kept digging, he would always come up with it. And he wrote in such a vast array of material, from art songs, literally, like classical art songs, like Mood Indigo, which is almost like an aria from a great opera, to low-down blues songs, to jazz songs, of course, to very, very funny, clever, charming, almost like Cole Porter songs. And I did get stuck in one place, and I went to Mercedes Ellington, who was his granddaughter. And I said, Mercedes, and I knew she was going to choreograph the show because I'd worked with her before. And I said, Mercedes, I'm really having trouble finding this one song that I want for these two older characters. And she said, well, would it help you to have a list of the songs? And I said, sure, that would be great. And I thought she was going to bring me like 3 or 4 pieces of paper. She brought me this printout that I swear was this thick. And it was just song after song after song after song.
Was it the lyrics or just the song titles?
It was the song titles, when they were written, and I believe the lyricists as well, because he worked with a lot of different lyricists. And something just, in that specific case, something just attracted me to this title, Rocks in My Bed, because I thought that was just such a crazy title. And I went and found a recording of it and found the lyrics, and I said, that's perfect for this moment. And actually that has become a real show-stopping moment in the show, wherever it's played. So eventually, after being told, yes, honey, whatever you want to do, we'll do it. 3 seasons later, we finally were able to pull the money together to do what was, a fair size musical then and now.
Yes.
After several stops and starts, but we finally did it at the Old Globe, and it was immediately very, very successful. And almost within a week after we opened at the Globe, producers saw it and said they wanted to move it to New York. And we went to New York, and it was in the middle of a really crowded season. It was one of those first years when everything opened in April and May. And there were all these other big musicals surrounding it with much more money, frankly, than we had. So it didn't run a long time in New York, though it was well received and got Tony nominations and nice reviews and all of that. But Robert Falls was kind of a savior, and he came along and said, I didn't see it, but I was always really intrigued by this notion of what you did with Shakespeare and Ellington and setting it in Harlem in the 30s. He said, could we do that at the Goodman? I said, well, maybe. I said, of course, I'd be thrilled to. And we brought it to the Goodman. Again, a big success. That production was a co-production with Seattle Repertory Theater. And after that, the show sort of bounced around to several regional theaters, including Pasadena Playhouse, where I was for several years as artistic director. And then there just came a time when, because of some rights issues, it couldn't be done. So it had this long hiatus where it wasn't done, although people would call me now and then and say, can I do it? Can I do it? We have a great cast album with a phenomenal cast from this original Broadway production, and people knew the show from that cast album. But it was hard to arrange for people to do it. Finally, just a couple of years ago, someone in London decided that they wanted to do it on tour and then take it to the Lyric Hammersmith in London. And it had this sort of phenomenal response, you know, I think partially because the British know Twelfth Night so well, but there was also just something about the timing of it, the celebration of Black joy and Black excellence that made it very, very special in that tour and in the London production. And then the Signature Theater in DC just did it last year, and it had the same kind of great response. And it was right after that that I contacted you guys and said, you know, I really think that Chicago would love to see the show again. Cheryl West and I had done some work to tighten things, to focus some things, smarten up some things from the productions long ago. And after a couple of years, we wound up here. So I'm sitting here talking to you now.
And Cheryl came into the project at the earliest point. Talk about a bit
Not
about
the
your
very
work with
earliest
Cheryl.
point.
Yeah.
I sort of did a treatment, a scenario of the show, adapting the Shakespeare play, and did all the research on the songs, and making sure that the songs were going to tell the story as I had promised myself. So that treatment was there. But I knew that I wanted to work with a playwright. So I met Cheryl at the Old Globe also. She'd done a play called Jar the Floor, which was very, very popular. And I loved her use of language and the fact that the language was theatrical and heightened, which is exactly what I wanted, because the characters were so vibrant and so hyper-real that it needed that kind of linguistic treatment as well. So I said to Cheryl, I have this crazy idea, and would you read this and think about it? And she said, yes, of course, and she read it and came on board right away. Yeah, so she was involved in that very first production at the Globe, yes.
That's so great.
Yeah.
And talk a little bit about, you know, Shakespeare's world, Harlem Renaissance, sort of the context of that choice in terms of where it's set for you.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes there are things that you do creatively, I think, and you can't really explain why you did it. It just seemed right. There was something about, I guess the first thing that I did was I went to look at a lot of paintings and drawings by Harlem Renaissance artists.
And that was the impulse because of the heart setting it in Harlem Renaissance,
Yes.
because of Duke Ellington?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes, because of the songs, and not so much Duke Ellington as the Duke Ellington world. Do you know what I mean? the kind of people
Explain
that
that,
Duke
yeah.
Ellington was surrounded by. I mean, in the Harlem Renaissance, you had parties that were attended by Zora Neale Hurston, Langston Hughes, Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Billie Holiday, you know, and you just go, oh my God, what must it have been like in that room? You talk about a magical kingdom, a magical place where that kind of music was literally flowing out of the windows, you know. And then you look at the style of the way people dressed and the way it was all depicted in these paintings. It just became, for me, the magical kingdom of Harlem, in the same way that you have to get to the magical kingdom of Illyria. You know, so I was looking for a place that would be magical, and Harlem during that period was certainly it. And I guess that it was that sense of transporting, and I'd seen again, you know, so much as what you've seen before you do something. Years and years ago, there was a pretty great production of Twelfth Night at Lincoln Center in the Beaumont. And I just remember that they did sort of what I've done in Twelfth Night. They transposed the shipwreck scene to open the play. And she said, okay, I'm lost in this beach, and you know, I don't know where I am, I don't know who I am. Let me go to the magical kingdom of Illyria and try to find my way and find my brother, actually. You know, and there was just this wonderful reveal at that grand stage at the Beaumont from this tiny, tiny little scene that was, you know, the shipwreck, to this beautiful, beautiful sort of velveteen world created at the Vivian Beaumont. And that idea of a young kid, a young woman arriving at Grand Central Station, which is kind of a shipwreck, you know, and trying to find her way and winding up in opening the door, like to the Cabin of Oz, opening the door to the color and the music and the energy of this great kingdom of Harlem seemed to have a great parallel. And then what I needed to solve was the need for the main character, Viola in the play, Vi in the musical. What was the need for her to have to dress up, you know? So it wasn't arbitrary. She didn't just go to Harlem and decide to dress as a man. Her need is that she wants to be not just a performer, she wants to be a songwriter. And at that time, that was kind of verboten. You know, women were known as great singers. Billie Holiday, Lena Horne, all of them, but they were not very much appreciated as songwriters. So the thought that in order to accomplish what she wanted to accomplish artistically, she would have to put on this garb and dress as a man to be introduced to the Duke, obviously a parallel with Duke Ellington, but also with Count Orsino in Twelfth Night, who could open up the world to her, the musical world to her, if she could convince him that she was a talented man rather than a woman. It was kind of a doorway into the story.
I love that. And as you think about doing this story, this world that we're in this moment versus 30 years ago, I mean, we think about how much in America has changed.
Or not.
Changed, yeah.
Yeah.
How do you think, as you're thinking about this production and this moment of telling this story, are there things that you're investigating that you're thinking about that's different, or how does the context of this moment cause you to think about this production?
Well, if there was ever a moment for celebration, genuine celebration of artists of color, people of color, the brilliance of people of color, the excellence of people of color, the joy of that joy that was captured in that magical kingdom of Harlem which we could use some of right now. If ever there is a moment for all of that, this is the moment. You know, when our stories are being denied or taken away or subtracted from society, from education, when our heroes like Duke Ellington, like Count Basie, like Lena Horne, like Fats Waller, when all of those people are suddenly being stripped out of history books or, you know, denied their brilliance as opposed to celebrating their brilliance, this is it. You know, so to have an opportunity to put on this stage with celebration a spotlight on Black excellence, Black joy, which is human excellence and human joy, that is specific to this era but universally appealing, now is the moment.
Yeah, and the celebration of the arts, right? When storytelling.
Yes, storytelling. The fact that, you know, women are still being told, oh, you can't do that, you're a woman. You know, you're kind of unusual in your position.
Yeah. But there's definitely differences, right, between
yes.
women and
I
how
was
we
certainly
engage the
unusual
world
in my position as
yes.
an artistic director
Yeah.
at a major American theater, you know, for most of the time that I was there, and I was there for 20 years. You know, but we're still told, oh, you can't do this. That's not a job for you, or that's not an area for you.
Yeah.
You know, you can go and sing, you can go and dance, but don't try to be a writer. You know, you can be in a movie, but don't try to produce one. You know, you can even produce a movie, but don't try to run a studio. That's crazy. That doesn't happen. You know, so the idea of gender equality is still something to be addressed. There's a lot in the play about how women love as opposed to how men love. And the Duke, you know, declares you can't be a writer, women can't be writers because they're incapable of a certain kind of passion and a certain kind of emotion. Only men can do that. Well, that's a subject to examine then and now, isn't it? Isn't it?
Absolutely.
So all of those things, you know, and some of those things are things that I think are deeper and a little bit sharper now in the book than they were years
Because
ago.
you've made some,
Yes.
you and Cheryl have been working on the book.
Yes.
You're continuing to work on the book a bit.
Yeah.
Can you talk about some of those
Well,
sharpenings or places?
that particular area
Yeah.
of that argument about how women love and how men love has really been expanded. There's a lot more quoting of actual Shakespeare lines put into the mouths of these characters, but in some cases literally lines from Shakespeare than we had before. And just overall focusing and character definition, and you know, she's older now, I'm older now, believe it or not. So, you know, just things that have become more personally important to us that we've interjected into the story.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's exciting
Yes,
to know that
it
we'll
is.
have a kind of a new look at it in a way. What do you, as you think about audiences and this theater being filled with people from the Chicago community, and I imagine even beyond, because we often get people that fly in to see work here. What do you want audiences to take away? What do you want audiences to experience?
The thing that always impressed me about Shakespeare is that it hit all the bases. It's funny, it's musical, but it's also deeply romantic, and sometimes dark and very moving, and talks about love and the experience of love in a very deep kind of way. I hope that we touch all of those bases in the show as well, so that the audience will certainly be entertained Absolutely. But also be moved to think about the issues that we just talked about. Be swept away by the romance of it. Be joyful. I often think that the emotional travel of the show is going from consternation to everybody being in the mellow tone. Again, contemporary parallels. If we could all just get into the mellow tone after watching CNN every morning, if we could all just take 2 hours and arrive at something that resembled the mellow tone for our society, for our country, and for our world, wouldn't that be an incredible thing to have happen? So there's that. There is certainly an absolute appreciation for the genius of Duke Ellington. Even I, after all these years, when I went to London to see the show and when I went to Signature, I would sit there and listen to these songs and go, oh my God, that is a brilliant song. That's genius, that song. And this is after hearing them, and maybe because I haven't heard, I've been doing other shows and other things, I haven't heard, but I would just be swept away by the beauty of this music and the variety of it. And how did anybody get, like Shakespeare, how was anybody able to touch all of those musical bases with absolute excellence, with absolute genius? He is a quintessential musical artist as much as Mozart is, in my opinion, as much as Gershwin is, most certainly, or Bernstein, His music deserves that kind of constant attention and recognition. And I think that above all, and I've said that a couple of times in emails, spotlight Duke Ellington, spotlight Duke Ellington. But this notion of sort of creating this team of Shakespeare and Ellington, I think is
Two
pretty.
great geniuses who stand the test of time.
Yeah,
for sure.
I often say that it's the bard of Avon meets the Duke of Ellington. There's
great.
just something kind of fascinating about that. And if again it was arbitrary, if it was just I threw in whatever song I liked, that wouldn't mean very much. But when I found the song, I let a song go out of my heart, I won't hear sweet music until you return someday, is exactly the same as if music be the food of love, play on, let there be excess of it, that surfeiting the appetite may sicken and so die. It's an exact parallel between what Shakespeare wrote and this brilliant song that Ellington wrote. Make Me a Willow Cabin is very much like Mood Indigo. So if you can get people to really listen, in a deeper way, and people often do, you do see this sort of creative team from centuries apart coming together in a very dynamic and theatrical way.